What's up, troopers? Time for another TFT mini. We're going to be talking about the B2 Super Battle Droids. So this is a unit that got a fairly substantial change when Legion 2.6 came around. They used to be one that was focused on armor, but now they changed it so that they're focused on just having plain old red saves, which is uh, pretty crucial when it comes to their survivability. On top of that, they got a very lovely change for them that gave them, first of all, this fun wrist rocket thing. We'll talk about like what are the situations where you don't want to actually use that, but their double black dice range 2 weapon also became melee weapon, which took away one of the big ways to make a B2 like less of a threat was to engage them. Now that ain't true anymore. Um, Fun fact about this unit, like from a keyword standpoint, it's just AI attack, and then everything else is the
Which
stats, which never
basically
matters.
isn't a keyword.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're curious to hear about it, there was a time when AI attack on B2s was an extraordinarily meaningful keyword for them to have, which is why they used to get a certain upgrade all the time that they get much less often now. But yeah, like Mike, I think that it's worth mentioning off the bat that the B2 stands out in the CIS because it doesn't actually contribute any synergy in and of itself aside from hurting things and being tough to kill, right?
Yeah, I mean this is basically just like like a stat brick, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just like buying stats when you're buying B2s, which is fine, right?
Sometimes it's
But
very helpful. Yeah.
yeah, unlike the B1s, you're not gaining any order synergy. Unlike the Geonosians, you're not gaining any mobility synergy.
Yep.
So really, B2s are just like, we're here, we're gonna shoot some stuff, we're gonna get shot, we're probably not gonna die, we're probably not gonna kill
Yep.
everything. We're just fine, and we're here, and we're doing our thing, um, and they're pretty good at that.
Yeah. So I think that that lends to the idea that, like, for sure that there are squads that just like dump B2s in there and that they do well. That will typically be a squad that has Grievous for a reason that we'll talk about here in a second. But I think that for your average CIS list, it's more ideal to think of if you're going to put a B2 in there, like what is your specific use for them going to be, and how are you gonna use the rest of your army to like give some synergy to them because again like they're very much synergy receivers and not givers, but a way to make them extra effective even more than they are just as being the pure stat brick because you usually want to have something more than that. Along those lines, there are quite a few ways that you can kit out the B2, despite the fact that it only has 3 upgrade slots. It has a heavier personnel and a comms. So let's start with the heavy. The relative value of cover in New Legion is usually lower than it was in Old Legion, and so that has been a big reason why the B2 ACM is the most popular heavy upgrade for them right now. The B2 Ha, on the other hand, is one that actually has it's contributing slightly worse dice because it has a white dice instead of a red. But it does add blast and it does add impact too, and it has cycle. So those things are like a mix of nice and not nice. But probably the big thing to think about here is the blast part, and
Yes.
something that we were talking about before the show is that the main context in which you might want to think about using the Ha instead of the ACM would be what, Michael?
You really want to look at super squads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if basically you want to be giving as many minis the blast keyword as possible. Um, and if you've got it in a super squad, you're going to hit way more dice with it. I think the other potential place you might take the Ha instead of the ACM is if you're really light on impact options, and this is like the only way to like kind of slide some impact into your list. I'm not going to recommend that as like a thing that you should be actively looking to do, but it is a place that you can get impact into your list if you have to. The cycle keyword on this upgrade is a pretty big drawback now that the
Yep.
game is shorter.
Yep.
You're probably only going to fire this
Twice,
twice if you're
maybe.
lucky.
Yeah.
So the ACM coming in at 3 red dice just at all times is pretty
At
big.
8 points less.
Yeah, at eight
Yeah.
points less. So like the reason to take the Ha is blast and or impact, and really the two scenarios outlined there are the only times I think you're going to want to take it.
And then that's of course because the bigger your dice pool is, the more hits that are in it, the relative value of cover goes up. Uh, the more dice that are in it, and so if you're adding blast to that attack, then you're potentially getting rid of like 4 or 5 cover saves at that point.
Yeah.
And that can be a fairly big deal and make it worth the cost of admission. So we were just talking about super squads. I feel like we should acknowledge the fact that they exist. But I think that
We acknowledge your existence,
yeah,
super
yeah,
squads.
at least giving them that much respect. Now there are situations where you're gonna be better off with a super squad compared to having, like, for instance, 2 squads with a heavy that comes in at a fairly similar total cost. Um, but I think that there's 2 things that I think of right off the bat. One of them is that if you're running EXD, where you're limited to 2B2 squads in the first place, and if the B2s are going to be where you've decided to invest more of your points, then you don't even have the option of doing 3 squads, even if you wanted to do that. And so
Yeah.
that's where it's easier to make that argument. The other thing I'll mention is that there is this concept that we mention fairly often. Refer back to our tempo video if you're not understanding what we're talking about here. But as a tempo piece, to have one really big, really scary unit that you're usually going to be activating like first in a round to
Yep.
take care of, like, probably take care of their biggest threat that you really don't want to be causing trouble for you, such as like if they have a Dinjarin that's not engaged in melee and you have like one chance to try to take him down, then you might do that. Or if they have a sleeper cell that hasn't activated yet and you want to take them down from 6 health to nothing, then activating a super squad first can do that. But aside from those scenarios, Mike, like, would you say that it's usually better to just have more units?
Generally speaking, I think the B2 Super Squad before any other upgrades, you're already clocking in at over 140 points. It's a very expensive unit.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Bad Batch kind of expensive at that point. I do think that once you are super squatting the unit, it is kind of a Bad Batch esque unit, right? Like you are, it is your sledgehammer, right?
Yeah.
It is the thing that is going to be doing damage in your list. You could have bought a persuader tank with those points, like
Yeah. An
so
important thing to
like
remember.
right, so like it can't not be doing damage at that point. So it is worth noting that the super squad is, from a effective health perspective, significantly more efficient than taking the squads separately, because the base squad is 3 health, or not 3 health, three
6 health.
minis,
Yeah.
6 health, and the super squad adds 4 minis, so it's adding 8 health to the squad, which is a big deal. But you know, I think generally speaking, you should probably go wide instead of tall with
The
your
nature of
your B2s.
POIs and
Yeah,
yeah, the being
just the
able
nature
to
of Legion
split
in general,
targets.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, in that personnel slide, though, there are some other options, and I think that first of all, I probably wouldn't think about putting medics or PKs in your B2s. Like, if you're going to be adding minis to this, you want to also be adding dice, and you'll usually want to be adding something that makes them more survivable. And the PK technically does that, but it's at its current cost when we're recording this, it's not really point sufficient to do that. So aside from the super squad, I think that the main things that you're thinking of are uh, there's basically two tiers, which is to say that tier one is the little Viper droid, which used to be a really easy choice when it was 6 points, and then they changed it a little bit to make it 9. So it's
Yeah.
slightly less easy, but it adds 2 dice. It adds a health, and that health is still behind the same red dice that everybody else is rolling.
Yep.
So like you're like pumping up your unit like just a little bit, but it's certainly not nothing. You're probably never going to use that observe action, but it is a
The
thing.
observe isn't there. Don't
Yeah,
ever do it.
you're doing it for the extra health and dice. But you can also do something. You can spend twice that many points to just add another mini, or you can add the T series. And Mike, I'll let you explain why you think that the extra mini is usually going to be a better option than the T series when you have that choice,
Yeah.
because they
So the
cost the
B2
same.
suit, yes, they cost the same. The main thing is that you're trading one health and a worse attack for 2 health and a better attack here, right? So on the B2 Super Battle Droid, you're getting the 2 health, 2 black dice. On the T series, you're getting reliable 1, which, if you are shot at for multiple turns in a row,
We'll add up to
will
extra
tech
health.
will add up to extra health.
Yeah.
That requires like some things to happen. First, like your opponent has to shoot you over the course of at least 2 turns,
Yes.
and you have to not die in those 2 turns, which you're a B2 squad, so you probably don't. But if they really concentrate fire on you, you are still going to die,
Yep.
right? And you are also making that squad less good at shooting things. So I think, it's kind of half a dozen of one, half a dozen of the other. The loses AI attack on the T series is completely
It's
doesn't matter
basically not
anymore.
relevant.
So yes, it is also a little bit relevant that because the T series is a leader, you actually can't lose your like worst offensive option first when you are taking wounds, which is a thing to keep in mind. Like you have to kill B2s that are throwing 2 dice as opposed to the
Yep.
T series throwing one. Unlike the Viper Recon droid, where you're just like, okay, first guy to go is those crappy 2 white dice. You are losing more of your effective offense earlier with the T series.
Yep. And then the last upgrade is the comp slot. The one that I think about the most on this, usually this will be empty. We should say that right off the bat, because we're not in the situation where, I mean, so like yeah, they can't take link targeting array. Um, we're not in a situation where spending 10 points on an HQ uplink is usually going to be a good idea on them. Uh, there's a couple options. The thing that I like the most is that if you are running one tempo piece super squad, then a hacked comms will basically like very often make sure that you'll have a face up order on them, because
For sure.
you very often will not in a droid list coordinate the order control is not what it used to be with droids in general. But if you spend that much points in a unit, then spending 5 to almost always like mid to late game have an order on them, then that can be very useful. Emergency transponder, maybe, but probably not. Like one aim token on these guys that don't have surge to hit is honestly probably not going to be worth it. The 4 points, and then spotter uplink is like a thing that might look good, but I would say that them getting meleeed is actually a thing that your opponent will often do on purpose
Yes.
in order to make them less of a threat to the rest of your army. It's true that they pack a serious punch in melee because their regular wrist blasters are also usable in melee. So the unit that engages them probably is going to die if it's a relatively full unit, but your opponent would be doing that to make it so that A, they can't use their heavy, and then B, that the unit that they don't want to be shot will not be shot because the B2 is engaged. So Spider Uplink will pretty much always end up being a non-usable upgrade if you try to do that. Comms Jammer does also like it's a thing you can do because
I actually think Comms Jammer is the best thing you can do here.
that's your favorite one, right?
It is because Comms Jammer specifically in a super squad, the diameter of the comms jammer bubble is range
Oh yeah, that's
4,
true. That's true.
which is a big.
Yeah,
That's like that is a large swath of stuff, and I think it's worth noting that the comms jammer, hacked comms unit, and the spotter uplink, all of their ranges to trigger get a lot easier to trigger
yeah,
in a super squad format.
yeah.
So
Because the range one cohesion, it's a big
it is a
deal.
thing. Yes, for
Uh,
sure.
and then Mike, I think we can end things by talking about some of the synergies that they have. Uh, General Grievous is a favorite because of the turn that he is ruthless, and a B2 conveniently you can give them a wound without actually taking a mini away, which means that you can give what will almost always, I mean, it'll almost always be like a extra move, so you can do a double
Yep.
move attack on a ruthless turn, which is an engagement tactic first and foremost, similar to the tactic that EXD can use, which is to spend a surge token to give them speed 3, which is like getting close to the value of doing a double speed 2 move.
Yeah.
So that's certainly another important synergy. And then the other one that I would think of mainly is that Pog of the Lesser. If you are running a list that also has enough Geonosians that you're motivated to run Poggle in the first place, that having Entourage B2 is pretty nice to be able to reliably get them an order token. And then, but as we mentioned him, like it's worth saying that Poggle's 4-pip, it may seem super attractive as a thing that you like need to be taking to protect your B2s, but what would you say to that, Mike?
It's a
It's a
trap.
trap. Why is that, Mike?
It's just not good. So the thing is, like, your opponent can play around the 4-pip if they want to. Generally, if they're gonna like start like pounding damage into your B2s, they're gonna focus it all
On
into
one
one
of them.
place. You're
Yes.
you're gonna
Until
get
it
like
dies. Yeah.
one mini back with the 4-pip, and you're gonna be sad because you're gonna be like, but the value, and it's just not gonna be there. The value in that card is that it's a 4-pip. It's like not a bad like early play in the game. But don't be thinking you're gonna be like bringing models back from the dead, like in Droid Factory conditions. So
Yeah. Yeah. So if your opponent if your opponent's always cooperated and like did a shot at a different B2 unit of your 4 B2 units every single round, then it might be a different situation.
your
Uh,
opponent took 4 sniper rifles and
it's like
killed exactly one B2 model
like
out of
okay,
four
time to move on to the
squads.
next one.
Yep. We
Then
got
yeah,
one from that squad, boys.
yeah. If you were getting 8 wounds back if you're getting 8 wounds back every time, that card would be great. But that
Yeah.
is not going to happen. Okay, well, I think to summarize, the B2 is a brick. That's and but hey, what is a brick? It hurts a lot when it's thrown at somebody, and that it takes a lot of effort to destroy a brick.
Yep.
But it's also not the most synergistic piece of equipment in your house. So as long as you keep that in mind, B2s can have quite a bit of utility, but just try to have a plan for them up front, and don't make the assumption that just tossing a bunch of B2s in your list is going to make it an unstoppable, unkillable, super strong army that's going to bowl over your opponents, because that actually doesn't work in Star Wars Legion.
Though it will look really
It
cool.
does look very cool on the table, and if that's what you care about, then by all means, just like throw as many B2 minis as you possibly can, and it's going to turn some heads in the shop as long as you use an appropriately shiny paint job on them
Yep.
to make them look snazzy. So that's the B2. If you like what we're doing here, then please consider checking out the Patreon, and we will see you in the next TFT mini.